If you weren't here with us last year, Rise and Fall was a series that we did for 27 weeks last year where we walked through the book of 1 Samuel, and I knew God wanted us to go through 2 Samuel this year, so we're going to pick that very long series back up and begin to just walk through 2 Samuel. And if you weren't here last year, 1 and 2 Samuel is kind of the story of how Israel's monarchy gets going. There was a prophet named Samuel early on in 1 Samuel who eventually goes to call the first king of Israel, Saul, who ends up being quite a miserable king. And we come to the demise of Saul right at the end of 1 Samuel. And through about halfway through 1 Samuel, see the rise of another king named David that you might be more familiar with, and we see his kind of rise happening about the same time as Saul's demise, and that's why this whole series is called Rise and Fall. And 2 Samuel, what we're going to be focused on this year, and this series is actually going to carry us through right up until Christmas. We're going to watch David kind of ascend to the throne of Israel and see also his rise. But sadly, again, halfway through the book, we're going to see his fall as well, and the fallout of that. And so we pick up this series. We'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 1 today. And I don't know about you. I was just thinking about this yesterday when my wife was buying school supplies for our kids online. Like, it's almost that time. Like, summer is quickly slipping away, and we're almost back into fall. And for someone like me who really enjoys summer, this is a pretty sad time. But the one thing that fall always makes me excited for is football season. Anybody? Yeah, there we go. It's like, I think that God knew what he was doing. It's like these people are going to be sad at the end of summer. Give them something to look forward to. Now, when I was in college, I was starting to get into the NFL, and two of my best friends that lived in my dormitory were, pray for them, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And did you know, when it comes to the Steelers, there's some teams I could have mentioned and everyone in here would just go, eh. But when you mention someone like the Steelers, nobody feels neutral, do they? It's like you either that's your team or you hate them. And the same was true when I was in college, and I had these two guys that lived on my dormitory floor. They were big Steelers fans, and every Sunday they would get together in their room and watch the Steelers games. You were not allowed in their room, again, because the Steelers are so polarizing for so many people, you were not allowed to go watch the game with them if you were not a Steelers fan. They wouldn't let you in, because everybody that would come in, if they let you in, you would just go in there and give them a hard time the whole time. And these were two of my best friends, and the Dolphins, who I'm a fan of, are never on TV. So for my whole freshman year of college, I decided to pretend to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan so I could go and watch the game with these guys. I even ended up, that was the year that Pittsburgh actually won a Super Bowl. I actually ended up in Pittsburgh in celebration parades and all of this, wearing a Troy Polamalu shirt like I'm the real deal. But I wasn't. I'm a Dolphins fan. I've been a Dolphins fan since 4th grade. And I did that because I wanted something in return. I wanted to be part of the little group that got to watch the Steelers games. I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want to be left behind. I didn't want to be held at arm's length. I was trying to get something out of it. And I tell you that story because I think that in some ways in our life, both big and small, that we are guilty of doing that very thing. That to try to get ahead, to try to gain favor with people, to try and get something out of it, that we may pretend to be something that we're really not. That we may, on the outside, try to put together this facade or all of this window dressing that makes people around us go, oh, yeah, they're one of us, let them in. And honestly, we're faking it. Or maybe you're not faking it. Maybe you're outright lying to people in your life. Like you're telling lies and you're living lies and you're the only one that knows about it. And my heart kind of breaks whenever the Lord leads me in this direction, because I think a lot of times the Lord leads us to a text like this and a sermon like this, not just the way we can gain more knowledge, but because there's probably some people that this is going to intersect with your life in a really personal way. And maybe you don't have any big lies going on and you're not out there overspending your budget to try to impress people to make them think that you're something, but maybe the way that you show up in kind of a fake way is maybe it's in a small way that someone just goes, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And your response is always, "I'm great." Even if all hell is crashing down around you. Even if your whole world is burning, but when they ask you, you say, "How are you doing?" You're, "Oh, things are really, really good." And you show them this false side of you. What I want to show you today through our text is that there's consequences for the large and the little ways that we decide not to be our true selves. For not letting people in to see the real us. For showing someone something that's not true or outright living a lie. There's going to be consequences for it. And as I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking, why do we do this? Like for some of us, we do. We want to be accepted by people in our lives, and we want to get something out of it. I know for me, one of the reasons why sometimes I'll show up a little bit fake in situations is because the last time I was real with people, it hurt. And you let some people get too close to the real you, and they burnt you. And you decided no one will ever see the real me again. So I don't know why you might show up a little fake every once in a while. Maybe it's from hurt, or maybe it's because you're trying to manipulate situations or whatever it is, but I want to show you today that there are some consequences for this. And so we're going to pick up this story, 2 Samuel chapter 1. I know that you don't remember what happened in our final week last year, so let me pick up the story there. King David and King Saul were both leading armies at the end of 1 Samuel into battle. And we saw the demise of Saul, where his army is overtaken by the Philistines, and we're told that he is killed, as well as his son Jonathan is killed at the end of 1 Samuel. David has returned home from battle and realized that this group of bandits, the Amalekites, had stolen everything from their camp. And so David sets out with his men to go and to defeat the Amalekites. And unlike Saul, whose men were decimated, David goes and is victorious and receives everything back that was stolen, and he returns home victorious. And that's where we pick the story up in 1 Samuel chapter 1. It says this: "After the death of Saul, David returned from the victory over the Amalekites and spent the next 2 days at Ziklag. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's army camp. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show that he was in mourning. He fell to the ground before David in deep respect." Now here's what's happened. An Amalekite this is an interesting person to show up at David's camp. He's part of the group that David had just went and decimated to get all the stuff back that they had stolen from him. The Amalekites were one of the arch enemies of the Israelite people. One of the arch enemies of David and his men. And here's an Amalekite showing up, and not just showing up at David's camp, which would be brave enough, but he comes in and he's got himself looking like he's in mourning. He's torn his clothes and put dust on his head, which is what someone would look like in the ancient world when they were trying to show that they were in mourning or deep grief. And even more interesting is that when he shows up, he bows down before David. Why would this foreign man who's the arch enemy of David and his people, why would he come and bow before David? If I'm being honest, the whole situation's a little suspect. Right? Like, he has no reason. Why would he be mourning that the king of Israel is dead? Because he's not even from Israel. He's one of their enemies. The whole thing does seem quite suspect. We read on in verse 3, it says, "Where have you come from?" David asked. He says, "I escaped from the Israelite camp, the man replied. What happened? David demanded. He said, tell me how the battle went. David doesn't know about Saul and Israel's demise at this moment. He says, our entire army fled from the battle. Many of the men are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead. How do you know Saul and Jonathan are dead? David demanded of the young man. So he goes and gives this account. He goes, who are you? He goes, I'm an Amalekite. I was with the Israelite army. They were decimated. And I want you to know that King Saul and his son Jonathan are dead. Now, I think that this man thinks that that's going to be music to David's ears. Because if you remember last year, as we walked through 1 Samuel, Saul had chased David around the wilderness for years and years trying to kill him. And my guess is if you heard that someone that had done something similar to you had met their end, had met their demise, you might be pretty happy with it. But this Amalekite does not know that David's allegiance was always to God's anointed one. So hearing that Saul is dead is not good news to David. It's definitely not good news to David that Jonathan is dead, because Jonathan is David's best friend who at one time had actually helped him escape from his father Saul, who was trying to kill him. It's pretty remarkable that this man shows up with this story. Verse 6 tells us this. It says, I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the enemy chariots and charioteers closing in on him. And when he turned, he saw me, and he cried out for help. He said, how can I help? He responded, who are you? He says, I'm an Amalekite, I told him. Then he begged, come over here and put me out of my misery, for I am in terrible pain and want to die. So here comes the confession. So I killed him. The Amalekite told David, for I knew that he couldn't live. Then I took his crown and his armband, and I have brought them to you here, my Lord. Now, this is actually a very believable story. This guy says, I was at the battle, I saw what happened, and as the way for you to know that this really did happen, I'm going to present these items that belong to Saul that only if I was telling the truth could I give you these items. It's a really, really well-rehearsed story. Really well-rehearsed. Now, why might this man show up and give David this sort of information? It would be my summation, and as well as many that have studied this passage, that it seems like this man understands the situation. That Saul is now dead. David is now getting ready to be the rightful king of Israel, which we'll get to that in just a couple of weeks. And I'm trying to gain favor with the new king. I'm trying to get a leg up on the competition. I was an outsider. I'm trying to be an insider. And I think that if I show up and tell David that this crazy man that's been trying to kill him for all these years is dead, and I went ahead and brought the crown to him, I think that it might serve me well for him to know that I'm the one that did it. Because I'm trying to get ahead. I'm trying to make a name for myself. I want something out of this. I want David and his men to think that I'm something that I'm really not. And I'm telling you, it was a really, really well-rehearsed story. Because all the details of it make perfect sense. How else does he come across these items that only you could get if Saul really was dead and you were the one that killed him? How else does he know that Israel has been decimated? Why else would he show up with his clothes torn and dust on his head? I mean, he's playing it, and he's playing it well. And the whole problem with this man's story, now granted, David does not know this, you and I know this, is that it was all a lie. It was all a lie. The man shows up and goes, oh yeah, don't worry, Dave. Took care of that little Saul problem for you. I saw him, he was almost dead. I went ahead and finished the job for you, thinking he's going to get ahead. Yeah, but the whole thing's a lie. And you're going, well, how in the world do you know that he's lying? Well, if you go back and you read 1 Samuel chapter 31, here's what we read. Now the Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before them. Many of them were slaughtered on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. So the man had the right location. He knew they were fighting there. The Philistines closed in on Saul and his sons, and they killed 3 of his sons, Jonathan, Aminadab, and Malchishua. The fighting grew very fierce around Saul, and the Philistine archers caught up with him and wounded him severely. So we find out that Saul was actually wounded by a Philistine archer. Most likely fatally wounded, except for that's going to take a little while to take effect. So we read in verse 4, it says, Saul groaned to his armor bearer, not to an Amalekite, to his armor bearer. He says, take your sword and kill me before these pagan Philistines come to run me through and taunt and torture me. So here's the thing. If you're the Israelite king, the last thing you want is for you to have the enemy kill you. You'd rather go out on your own terms. And so he's trying to get his armor bearer to do this for him. But the armor bearer was afraid and would not do it. So Saul, it tells us, takes his own life with his own sword. And that's the actual story. And so how does this Amalekite come to David with this story? Well, here's what most likely happened, most scholars will tell you, is that this Amalekite was a bit of a scavenger. He saw the battlefield where all these bodies lay decimated and was wandering through, seeing what all he could pick up. Remember, the Amalekites are the people that just raided the camp of David just a couple chapters ago in 1 Samuel. So he's scavenging through, and he comes across the jackpot. The king of Israel is lying dead with his son Jonathan nearby, so he is able to take these items and go find David in hopes that he might gain a leg up on the situation. But it's completely false. Now, I told you in college I pretended to be a Steelers fan so I could hang out with the boys on Sunday afternoons. But have you found different ways that you're kind of doing the same thing that the Amalekite did, where you're going, look what I did, look who I am, this is because you're trying to get ahead? I know that this was a big issue for a lot of us in this room in middle school, right? Right, I told the story last year. When my family moved to Cross Lanes, we had some of my friends from my old school come to my house when I was in 6th grade. It had never occurred to me whatsoever that my family was poor until this kid looked at me and said that you live in the house that you live in, which happened to be a double-wide trailer. He looked at me in 6th grade. He says, you live in this house because you are poor, and that's the first time anyone had ever told me that. It had been true my whole life. First time anyone made me aware that I was poor. And then what that did throughout the rest of middle school and high school, and probably still some residual damage to this day, is that I would ask Mom and Dad, can you please get me the nice clothes from the mall and the nice shoes with the name brand stuff on it, because I don't want anyone to, I know that it's true, but I don't want anyone to know. And so we will dress a certain way, and we'll try to have certain things. That way everyone will look at us and go, see, no. He's actually one of us. He's actually part of us. And it would be years before I would let anyone actually come to my house. I wouldn't invite my friends over to my house. I was trying to make sure that no one would ever find out that I was the poor kid in the group. And I know you go, wow, that's really sad that you went through that in middle school. And I go, yeah, I know, and it's really sad that some of us, we have not graduated from that. That we're still trying to be part of the group by any means necessary. And you thought that you left it behind in middle school, but to be honest, the facade and the charade just got more expensive as you got older. It got more elaborate as you got older. The scheme that you were trying to run to make sure everyone thought that everything was okay, it just got a bit more expansive. And I just want to say, whether you're faking in major ways or in small ways and just nobody just really knows the real you, I just want you to know that there is a consequence to taking that path of not being your real self, of not letting anyone know who you really are, of trying to fake it. There's a consequence, because Because look what happens next. You would think David would be elated at the idea that Saul is dead. This clears the path for me to be the king. That's not what happens at all. It says, David and his men tore their clothes in sorrow when they heard the news. David is genuinely sorrowful that the anointed king of Israel is lying dead on a mountain in Gilboa. And it said they mourned and wept and fasted all day for Saul and his son Jonathan, for the Lord's army and the nation of Israel, because they had died by the sword that day. And then David said to the young man, he said, where are you from? David doesn't know that he's an Amalekite at this point. He says, I'm a foreigner, I'm an Amalekite who lives in your land. He said, why were you not afraid to kill the Lord's anointed? Which is probably an answer David really wants, because David had many chances in 1 Samuel to get rid of the problem of Saul. And every time he said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lay a hand on the Lord's anointed king. So he goes, what makes you think that you should have done this? Why were you not afraid? He says, and so David says this in verse 15. He says, kill him. So the man thrust his sword into the Amalekite and killed him. And David pronounces this over him. He says, you have condemned yourself, for you yourself confessed that you killed the Lord's anointed. Listen, here's why it matters if you are faking it. If you're not really showing the people around you the real you. Here's why it matters, is that there's actual consequences for it. Think about this man. He was clearly a foreigner living in Israel. He's at peace. He's in no danger whatsoever. The only way that he ends up in danger is when he decides, I can play a part to get ahead. I could fake it until I finally make it. Because had he never shown up at David's camp, he wouldn't be lying dead at David's camp. In fact, he could have shown up with the same items in hand, told David what really happened, and that might have actually gotten him where he wanted to go. But instead, because he lies, he faces the consequence of his lie and now lies dead at the camp of David. Why? Why would he do this? Here's the other thing I was thinking, that if you're living a lie or trying to make it out like you're something that you're really not, here's the other danger in that, is that there's not any really good ways to escape it. Think about this for a second. What if his plan had actually worked? You ever think about that? You ever know, like a guy that'll try to maybe, or a girl, when they're trying to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend, maybe they lie a little bit about who they are? You ever think about what happens if that relationship actually ever works out? Like, you got to be a pilot the whole time, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you were a pilot the night that y'all met, but you wasn't really a pilot, like, now you got to be a pilot. All the time. However you fudge the numbers a little bit, however you show up a little bit fake, just know that if it actually works, you are now stuck in the lie. You're now stuck, whatever it was that you said, oh yeah, that's who I am. So if you live your life to try to impress people by what you have, just know there's no end to how much more you'll have to go get to continue your charade that you actually belong. If you get stuck in the lie, and that's a consequence all of its own. Because if this man hadn't been killed on that day, he would have had to live that lie. And do you know how miserable that would be? You know how miserable it is every day to show up and wonder if this is the day that you're going to get found out? Is this the day that they're going to find out I'm not really who I said that I was? Is this going to be the day that my family finds out? Is this going to be the day that everything comes crashing down around me? Oh, I wonder if this is why we have record numbers of anxiety and depression right now, because we have so many fakes going throughout life, wondering if today is the day that they'll be found. Because nobody wants to be the real them. I mean, can you imagine if it had worked, he would have got everything he wanted and never been able to enjoy it because he would have known that he was living a lie. And listen, there's some of us right now, we're going, this ain't a big deal. Like, I'm getting away with it right now. I'm getting away with it. It looks like it's working, and I'm not feeling any of these consequences that you're saying. Hey, listen. And I'm not making a joke about this, not one bit, because the people that are making jokes about this, I think, are flat out wrong. But you think that you're getting away with it till you show up at a Coldplay concert. Yeah, you think that you're getting away with it. And I don't think adultery is funny in the least bit. I just want you to know that if you think that you can escape the sight of God and his light that will shine in every dark shadow of your life, he can use something as silly as the place that you showed up and put your business all over Twitter for everyone to see. So this man ends up dead. There is a consequence to faking it. And you go, death? Maybe you're not going to drop dead. I don't know. Maybe the stress of your lie will kill you someday. But you know that faking it will lead to the death of your relationships. Some of you, because you were living a lie, it led to the death of your marriage. It led to the death of your job. It led to the death of the relationship that you have with your kids. Because you were faking it, it wasn't never the real you. No one ever got to know the real you. And so, yes, it led to the death of your health, the death of your sanity, and might ultimately end up with the death of your soul. Because we didn't want to be the real us. We wanted to live a lie. I think trying to live this way and getting away with it for a little while, the anxiousness of it is what leads to all these breakdowns that we see in people. And I come back to this question that we started with. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, we love to go around talking about, I don't care what nobody thinks about me. Yes, you do. That's why you do what you do. That's why you live how you live. You do care what they think. That's why your social media only has the highlights of your life on it. Because if you showed them the real stuff, they might stop following you. You might stop getting all those likes. Why do we do this? Especially knowing that you don't have to. You don't have to do that. Like, if you can't be the realest version of you and show up authentically into relationship with others, then why do you want it? What do you want the stress of having to be a fake for? I promise when you find the right people to do life with and you find the right circles to run in, you don't have to fake it. Like, last week we talked about rest and how sometimes we don't rest because we have a severe identity issue. I think that this is another severe identity issue, that we pretend to be something that we are not because we don't know who we really are in Christ. And I want to tell you, I heard this from Pastor Stephen Furtick many years ago on a sermon on a completely unrelated topic to this, but he said, listen, God cannot bless who you pretend to be. God cannot bless who you pretend to be. So you're out here looking for blessing and you're looking for favor like the Amalekite, but it's never going to work out for you because it's not the real you. You're living a lie. You're telling a story. You're not being honest. And eventually you'll pay the consequences for it. And we learned all throughout 1 Samuel last year that anytime we're looking at stories of David, that David is always pointing towards a far greater king of Israel who is to come. And I look at this story and I go, I wonder how many of us were trying to do this with God. I wonder how many of us were trying to appease God with a false facade of religiosity and spiritual practices and spiritual language, spiritual disciplines and spiritual habits, all hoping that somehow that will overtake whatever it is that feels lacking in our life. And much like the Amalekite, you're trying to impress the king with what it is that you're doing. But I want you to know that when it comes to the greater King of Israel, Jesus of Nazareth, you don't impress him by what you do. It's not actually at all about what you do. Conjuring up favor with God is not about what you do or what you have done or what you will do. Your right standing with God is all because of what Jesus has done, not what you have done, and so you can't fake that either because he knows. He knows if it's the genuine desire of your heart to draw close to him, or if going to church is just a nice habit that your family has. He knows. He knows the genuineness of your prayers and your worship and your serving and your giving. He knows. You can't fool him. You can't fake him. And in fact, you don't have to. He's the one relationship where you can show up fully you and find out that you are fully loved, even if the real you might not be that impressive to anybody else. There's a God in heaven who is absolutely crazy about you.